So the reason why I'm making this video is because I noticed for myself when I started preparing for the DAT, there wasn't a lot of good information out there. I was looking all around and no one seemed to, well, some people knew what they were talking about, but a lot of things didn't work out for me. And on YouTube, there's hardly any information. So you're just kind of going by word of mouth. So hopefully this can help some people out, help them that give them the help that I did not have. So just wanted to talk about how to study for the DAT, what I used, how it helped me. So on my DAT, I got a 20 overall, not super great, but I got a 19 on bio, 19 on gen chem, 20 on O-chem. I got a 21 on reading, a 22 on quantitative reasoning, and then I got a 23 on perceptuability. So what I first started to do was I was just reading, trying to just get all the information in my head before I really started to do practice problems. Such a big mistake. I wish I wouldn't have done that. Practice problems were the biggest thing that helped me. And I kind of wanted to go through some of the materials that I used. The two main, or actually the only materials I really used was DAT Bootcamp and also DAT Destroyer. So with DAT Bootcamp, the thing that I liked the most was the practice problems, the practice tests. They helped me a ton. And just for reference, when I first did a full practice test, I did one in the very beginning just to kind of see where I was. I got 17 overall. I don't know, I can't remember the exact numbers for O-chem and for my sciences, but my total sciences was like 17 or 18. On quantitative reasoning, I got a 16 my first time. And then also reading I got a 20, and perceptuability I got like a 21, 22. So those scores, I don't know how, but I guess reading and perceptuability just kind of comes naturally for me. But math and some of the sciences I was just very rusty on, so I got my butt kicked. So DAT Bootcamp really helped me out a lot, and then also DAT Destroyer. DAT Destroyer was a great thing to do once I got a lot of the information, the basic information down. It really gave me a lot to build upon and to get a deeper understanding on a lot of the science concepts. So I made a big mistake for the first couple weeks of studying. So I was planning on taking the DAT after only 6 weeks of studying, but because of the coronavirus, I had to reschedule because everything got canceled. So I had to reschedule. So I got an extra couple weeks, like 3-4 more weeks of studying, which honestly saved my butt because for the first 4 weeks of those 6 weeks of studying, I did not do a good job. I had a horrible strategy. I was just kind of do my own thing, just read, and hopefully I would get the information down. Don't do that. But once I started doing practice problems, I really focused on a lot of practice problems and figuring out what I didn't understand from those practice problems, and then went into the material and learned from that, from the things that I didn't understand. That helped so much more. So, and I kind of feel like I really only studied for about 6 weeks because the first 4 weeks did not work out, and then the last 2 weeks with the extra 4 weeks I got from the coronavirus rescheduling my test, that's where I feel like 90% of my progress was made. So hopefully this will help you guys out, not make the same mistakes that I did. What I started to do, and if I was to re-study for the DAT, this is exactly what I would do, and I feel like I would get a much better score with more time. But I would read 10 pages of like DAT Bootcamp's bio notes or Ferrali's notes. Those are free, so that's a good resource for you if you can't afford DAT Bootcamp. Get Ferrali's notes. They're great. It's basically the same thing, but DAT Bootcamps have a little bit more information. But I started reading 10 pages of that every day, really reading it, making sure you understand it, because it's very easy to kind of just passively read and then you don't retain anything. So really make sure you're reading it, and then if you start to notice that you're drifting off and you're not retaining it, stop, just take a break and rest a little bit, like take a 10-15 minute break, come back to it, and then so you can retain the information, because that's a big thing that I noticed was I would sometimes just go on for like 2-3 hours straight, and probably after the first hour my mind started to go blank, but I just kept doing it because I was like, I need to get the information down. But it doesn't do you any good if you aren't even retaining it. You're just kind of wasting your time at that point. So make sure you take breaks. So I would read 10 pages a day from the bio notes. I would try, after I would read, I would also go into DAT Bootcamp and do the practice problems like associated with each section that I read. So sometimes with the notes, they're condensed, so I would get through like 2 or 3 sections. So then I would do the practice problems for each section. So I would go through these. I went through these notes 3 or 4 times. You want to go through them as many times as you possibly can. And if you don't understand what some parts of the notes, what I would do is like, I would read a section and I was like, I really didn't understand it. I'll go to YouTube. YouTube's a great resource. You can just watch some videos on the exact sections that you did not understand, and there's some great teachers on there that they can explain, tell you exactly what this means or that means. And then I'll go back to the notes. So use the notes as like kind of like a skeleton. And then if you notice there's parts that you don't understand, go to YouTube, watch a video, come back to them, and then do those practice problems. So I would do that. And then, yeah, I feel like with bio, it's just tons of repetition. You just got to pound it in your head. And there's so much information. You just got to do more and more. And then with bio, I had the DAT Destroyer. So with the DAT Destroyer, I would do 33 problems every single day. Well, I started doing that once I got my study schedule figured out, and that helps so much. And on the real DAT, there's going to be things that you don't know, but I feel like DAT Destroyer really hits a lot of important concepts that you might not see in the notes, and help re-solidify concepts that you have read. Honestly, with DAT Destroyer, even if you're just to use it for the bio notes, it's well worth it. And you can get it on eBay for quite a bit cheaper than buying it brand new. Like you can get like a version or 2 older, like they're pretty much the same, like a couple years older, and you can get them for like $40-$50. So it's one of the cheaper resources you can use, and it's a very valuable one that you should be using. So I would definitely get DAT Destroyer, if anything else. So I would do that, and just take your time. Make sure you get through the notes and really understand the concepts. Then with O-chem and Gen Chem, obviously the DAT Bootcamp has Mike doing videos. I honestly would just, like, if you don't understand the concepts, you got to watch those videos. I'll try and get through those videos as fast as you can while retaining it, and then start doing tons of practice problems, because the practice problems are what's going to really get it stuck in your head, which, again, that's one of the biggest mistakes I made. I didn't jump into practice problems soon enough. So I'll just start doing practice problems, and if with DAT Destroyer, the concepts are harder, like it's a lot harder than the actual DAT, but it really solidifies the concepts. So just doing tons of practice problems. I'd recommend doing like 30 practice problems of Gen Chem, 30 practice problems of O-chem a day. And that's what once I started getting my schedule figured out, I was just doing that. And that's where I really learned, was just the practice problems. 30 of each section a day. Mike is great. He was actually my O-chem teacher, so I'm a little biased. He's a great teacher, so I always was pretty solid with O-chem going into it. But obviously there's some things that I kind of forgot. And also Chad's videos. If you don't buy DAT Bootcamp, Chad's videos is a great way because they're free. You can watch those to get the concepts down. And some people prefer him over Mike. It just depends. I think Mike does a fantastic job. Like, he has really helped me out. But Chad also does a great job, and that's a free resource you can use. With the with reading is kind of a hard one to kind of practice for. I think the biggest thing is just figuring out a strategy that you're going to use as you read, and then just doing a reading article every single day. And if you don't really understand your strategy well, practice doing your strategy when you're doing the reading article in some way, just so you can get it down in your head. I think the biggest thing, besides practice sections or practice or the little daily articles that you can read is to do those practice sections on DAT Bootcamp or Q Vault of some you're going to need kind of like a study program. I think Q Vault's a little cheaper than DAT Bootcamp, but I've heard great things. I didn't use them, but I've heard great things about them. But I think with reading, if you really need to improve that, doing a reading article every single day, practicing your reading strategy with those reading articles as you go through them, and doing practice sections. Like with DAT Bootcamp, they'll have like like 10 practice sections of every single part of the DAT. You can do a full practice test with it, or you can do them individually. And I would do the first 5 sections and just practice it over and over just to get the reading down. And then a week before, I was starting to move into the full practice tests, which I'll get into a little bit more. So that's what I would do. And also, the strategy I used was search and destroy, but as I was going through the article of search and destroy, I would highlight things that I thought were key concepts, which is very important because that saved my butt. And I didn't know you could highlight, but you can highlight on the real DAT, and that's a huge thing. With the math section, this was something I actually really struggled on. Some people it comes naturally, but if you really struggle like I did, it's going to be practice problems, just tons and tons of practice problems. So I did 30 practice problems a day. The DAT Bootcamp actually does a great job with the QR section if you just do tons and tons of practice problems. If you need more, you can get DAT Destroyer, or you can use the math section on DAT Destroyer, or get Math Destroyer. I actually did get Math Destroyer, went through that whole book. I was doing 30 problems a day. And then I also did a ton of problems on the DAT Bootcamp. So there's plenty of problems. If you get both of those resources, you're going to be just fine. And you can redo them after you've gone through all of them. You could redo them because there's probably 1,000 problems with both of those together. So after you've gone through those and you restart, you're going to forget them. So, or maybe you remember a little bit, but not too much. And for perceptuality, I'm lucky, like it kind of came naturally, but if it's a hard thing for you to do, again, it's just practice problems. That's the only thing you can do for perceptuality. I did 30 practice problems a day, and that really solidified it in my head. But even starting out, like I was getting like a 20, 21 on the practice sections, 22, I'm not exactly sure. But I ended up getting a 23. It was my highest section, and I really think it's just because I would do 30 practice problems a day, and it really doesn't take that long. It took me about like 10, 15 minutes a day just to do that. So that's what I would recommend. And I know Q Vault, they have a great perceptuality section. That's what everybody says. But honestly, with DAT Bootcamp, I thought the real DAT was way easier on perceptuality than on DAT Bootcamp. So if you get DAT Bootcamp, you're going to be plenty fine on that. Just tons of practice problems and you'll be set. Yeah, I definitely would recommend DAT Destroyer. It really helped out, especially for the bio. Really utilized the bio. And the Gen Chem, O-chem, again, it's quite a bit harder. It's very difficult in those sections, but it helps you learn the concepts very well. So the biggest thing is like looking at the answers after. So I would literally do a problem and then go to the answer. And then I'd read the answer and really try to understand what was going on. And then go back and do the next problem, go to the answers. If you do that, you're going to learn the concepts very well, and you're going to be pretty much set for the actual DAT. So I think DAT Bootcamp, DAT Destroyer, those are the resources I use. I thought they were great. I know DAT Bootcamp is a little expensive, so if you're really on a budget, Q Vault, I heard, is good. I haven't used it, but a lot of people say that's a good resource. And then for the bio notes, you can use Ferrali's notes. I think DAT Destroyer is kind of a must. It's a big thing, especially if you don't have DAT Bootcamp to get those math problems in and those bio problems, and just having an abundance of old types of problems. It's going to really help, and you're going to need Q Vault at least if you don't get DAT Bootcamp, just to have practice tests and also the perceptuality and reading sections to practice on. But I think the biggest thing about DAT Bootcamp that I liked was just being able to do practice problems, so many practice problems, and then also full on practice tests to really help me get the timing down. That helped a bunch. I was able to finish the science sections about 20 minutes early. I was even able to finish the reading section about 5-10 minutes early, and the math section like 10 minutes early. Perceptual ability I finished like almost 30 minutes early. So, but I contribute it just to DAT Bootcamp being able to me practicing those practice tests and getting my timing down, and that's huge. So I think both of those resources are good. Again, if you can't afford it, you can do Chad's videos, QVault, Ferrali's notes. They're cheaper like alternatives to DAT Bootcamp, but I think DAT Destroyer is a big thing that you should definitely get. So my recommendation, if you're to break it down exactly, what I would recommend to do is 10 pages of bio notes a day from Bootcamp or Ferrali's, and watch YouTube videos if you're confused on a section. 30 O-chem problems a day, 30 Gen Chem problems a day, 33 bio problems a day, and then of course watch videos on YouTube if you don't understand certain things, or watch Chad's videos or Mike's videos on those topics if you're confused. 30 perceptual ability questions a day, 1 reading article a day, 30 math problems a day, and 1 practice section a day. And then for the last week, what I recommend is, if you have QVault or DAT Bootcamp, is to do a full practice test. Stop doing all the other stuff. Just do 1 full practice test a day, and then review all of the questions and really make sure you understand the explanations of each thing. And then the day before the test, rest. Make sure you sleep, get plenty of rest. Don't look at your notes. I actually looked a little bit at my stuff, which I shouldn't have, but you really just want to give yourself a break and give your brain a break before the biggest test of your life. So yeah, that's what I recommend. Hopefully this helps. Some last few tips and pointers that I would give you is, make sure you get plenty of sleep every single night, like around 8 hours. Because if you don't get enough sleep, your brain isn't going to function. You're not going to retain things as well. Make sure you take breaks. If you start to realize that you're not focusing as well, take a break. Give your brain a break so you can actually retain the information. Don't burn yourself out. With the study schedule that I just listed out, it honestly would take me 6 to 8 hours of studying, not including breaks or whatever, but it was really doable. This is a full-time study kind of schedule, but it will work. The information will get stuck in your head. You'll get a better score than I did because you'll know what to do right off the bat. But don't burn yourself out. Don't do too much, because it's a marathon studying for this test. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time to study for the test. I would not recommend trying to do it in like 4 weeks. You can if you really need to, but it's just so hard because you're going to get really stressed. You're not going to retain things as well. I'll give yourself like a month and a half, 2 months to study for this test, and you should do fine. But you don't want to give yourself too much time, because it is pretty exhausting. If you're studying for too long of a time period, you're going to get exhausted and you're going to get so sick of it. By the time I was about to take my test, I was just so sick of studying for the DAT. You just want to live life. So I wouldn't give yourself too much time, but I would give yourself enough time, like a month and a half, 2 months. I feel like that's a sweet spot. I feel like once you start pushing 3 months, it just becomes too long, and it's going to be too hard, unless you have like a job as well, so you have to break up the study schedule, like your study schedule some more, then that makes sense. But if you can dedicate full time for this, I would only give yourself a month and a half, 2 months to do it. Another thing is, make sure you're eating healthy. Get some greens in you, some healthy fats, because I noticed this. At some point I wasn't eating super healthy. I wasn't getting enough vegetables, and I was getting a lot of brain fog. So make sure you're eating healthy, getting all your vitamins and minerals, clear out that brain fog so you can actually retain that information. And then when you take the actual test, make sure you breathe, calm down. Through the bio and gen chem section, when I was going through that, I was so stressed out. I attribute that to me doing less than desirable. But then once I started getting to the O-chem, I calmed down a little bit, and then the reading section, math section, perceptuality, I calmed down quite a bit for those sections, and I did very well. At the beginning, I was very stressed out, so try and calm yourself down. Don't get freaked out. I kept thinking, if I messed up, this is the end of me. So don't think that. Just stay positive throughout the whole thing. You're going to crush it. And another big thing is you can look at student forums. This helped me a lot just to figure out my schedule. This is actually how I figured out to do a lot more practice problems, was on student forums. So if you notice, like if you start doing this and you notice it's not really working for you, a lot of practice problems don't work for you, you can look on student forums and see what other people did, get more information, and then try it out. But you don't want to try too many things out. Just stick to one thing and then go with it. Because if you try and do too many things at once, it's just not going to work well for you. But yeah, hopefully this helps. If you have any questions, just message me. I definitely want to help you guys out because I know how stressful it is. But yeah, thank you.